feel great, thanks to you.
Hey! What are you? Question is, what happened to his hormones?
The patient messed with the wrong woman. 13 has clearly been giving ringside assistance at the Muay Thai club. As tough as that was to witness though, we have a new clue: hypersexuality. That has pointed Foreman to a very rare and spicy diagnosis called very excited to be reacting to House MD's Season 5 Episode 3 Adverse Events. On this channel we are reacting to all 177 House episodes and this will be episode 98. Let's see if we can get the diagnosis before House does as a doctor working in London.
I still can't believe you talked me into this.
Okay, I think... Yeah, I'm done.
No, we'll look together. What the hell is that?
You asked me to paint her exactly as she looks.
Honey, stop it! Brandon!
Brandon, what is this?
What do you mean? It's her portrait.
You want your own personal PI, you're gonna have to pay for him yourself.
There's no distorted perspective in any of his other recent work.
Acute onset visual agnosia points to a stroke or brain tumor.
You crawled 20 miles?
My name's in the Guinness book.
I'll bet that really impresses the babes.
Who needs an MRI with contrast? We've established that. What do you got on tab?
Check his head and his house.
I mean, he already achieved the Asian parent's dream of having a doctor child, so what's the next step after that? A doctor with a world record in crawling distance. Now, the average crawl has a speed of around 1 foot per second or 0.7 miles per hour, which means Kuttner would have had to crawl for 28 hours to have his name in the legendary Guinness book. If it were any other character, I would say the writers messed up and that's physically impossible, but for Kuttner, he probably could do it. Now, our painter has a very spicy symptom: visual agnosia. I don't see the problem really. His art is just evolving into a more Picasso-esque style. Agnosia in the visual sense is an impairment of recognizing visually presented objects, while the visual field, clarity of vision, color, and other parts of vision are all completely preserved. A good example is someone who sees a pineapple but is unable to recognize it, even though they can by feeling, tasting, or smelling it. But what could cause that? Well, we all have something called an association cortex, which takes things we see and matches them to our memories to process recognition. In patients with agnosia, there could be damage to that association cortex, which could be from a whole host of things like brain tumors, migraine, or even encephalitis. That is all a bit strange though, as his first MRI was normal, but we're likely going to get a more detailed one with contrast coming up soon. Let's get more clues.
Is that stuff dangerous?
This is just the contrast material.
No, I did some drawings this morning and they seem fine. So maybe it was just a reaction to something I ate.
Baby, let them do the test.
Are you saying my wife's a slut?
I'm saying if my wife was a slut, I'd want to know. His place was clean.
So is his head. Just leaves toxins or drugs. What drugs are you on?
His drug tests were clean.
He's a guinea pig. Companies pay him to test their untested drugs.
The drugs are about to be approved by the FDA.
How many trials are you on?
3.
So whatever you took has probably cleared your system now. Your wife has a separate bank account. She's been making weekly cash deposits for about a year now.
It's not secret. We're refurnishing.
You're spending almost $100,000 on furniture.
It's fine, then all of a sudden you start seizing.
She is hot.
Well, it seems like the painter has creative talents, but not in art, more like deception. House's comment does seem a bit misplaced here. The guy's seizing on the bed, struggling to breathe, and House is checking the attractiveness of his mate, but somehow it's diagnostically relevant. You see, our patient is struggling financially, and House seems to think the hotter the patient's girlfriend, the more extreme measures he will take to keep the relationship ticking forward. One survey from the UK found that men lied 50% more than women, but that was asking people how many fibs they told, and since the average lie was 2 per day, then how can we trust a survey to give us the results? It's still interesting to know though what the common lies were for each gender. For men, it was, I didn't have that much to drink, nothing's wrong, I'm fine, or I had no phone signal. For women, it was, I've got a headache, I don't know where it is, I haven't touched it, and it wasn't that expensive. A slightly more rigorous but quite ancient at this point academic study by Fisher in 1996 found that 1 in 4 college males lied or made false promises to have sex. 58% of the lies related to caring or commitment, and 38% were that it wasn't a one-night stand. The men who were more likely to lie had greater sexual sexual experience, higher uses of alcohol, greater disbelief in women's use of the word no, and generally were more hostile. How do you think this study's results would be different if it were to be done today? Answers down below. Regardless of our patient's misalignment with the truth, he seems to have gotten himself into quite a pickle. He's registered for 3 different drug trials, is struggling for money, and is now having seizures. If this were just drugs though, he wouldn't still be deteriorating, which means something else is going on that can't be detected on even a contrast MRI. There are still a ton of things that could do that, like metabolic disorders, autoimmune encephalitis, or white matter brain disease. A really interesting one here that could cause all of those and wouldn't be easy to spot is methanol poisoning. If he's lacking money, then maybe he's buying bootlegged booze that hasn't been fermented properly. That could lead to all of his conditions and be missed on a tox screen. That has to be my first diagnostic guess, as it fits so well. I also love that House is slowly revealing dirt on each of the team members here, as his private investigator has been busy. I wonder what else he's got hidden in those files.
We need drugs to save children and puppies, ergo we need desperate people, ergo welfare kills sick children.
First drug.
Why do we call it bisexadrine?
Bisexadrine is designed as an anticoagulant.
Drug B is an autoimmune treatment. Almost no side effects.
Which is the third drug?
World Soros Nesosil. Cuddy used to have that title, by the way. We stopped them all. Put them on dialysis.
So plenty of paintings in the passage. Hit a bit of a dry spell lately, so.
She's not sleeping around. She's not gambling it away. She hasn't even spent any of it, so I don't see a reason to do anything. And I don't plan to poke into her business. You were right about the dialysis. He made it through the night without any more seizures or visual symptoms.
His head and neck are completely swollen. I need a trach kit. His throat's closing. Got it.
His face is so swollen it squeezed his tear ducts shut.
Either the drugs are the answer, or the drugs are a coincidence. That's why we're gonna put him back on the drugs, and then wean him off again, just much slower.
Wait. Did House just use logic to show that welfare kills sick children? That's wild even by House standards. What we do know now though is that the patient's face is swollen up from having the drugs filtered from their body. That means either the drugs were helping or it's a massive coincidence. I actually saw a 43-year-old patient with widespread facial swelling like this recently, and was also affecting his right arm, and the veins on his neck were bulging more than an eye-popping toy. He was also coughing up blood. With all of these symptoms, I sent him straight to A&E, where they diagnosed something called superior vena cava obstruction. It's a life-threatening complication where lung cancer presses on a vein that takes blood back from the brain and arm to the heart, causing the pressure to back up. It could be that the patient has that, and one of the drugs was treating it. Then as soon as the drug was filtered, the tumor got itself a free rein on the big vein. That has to be my second diagnostic guess. But question for you smart people, what is the approximate risk of death from taking part in an unlicensed chemotherapy drug trial? Answers down below, and I'll tell you at the end of the video.
How'd you know I liked roses?
I was in your house last night.
No, I'm kidding.
I went through some of the drawers in your desk.
I was so close.
You've got $83,000 socked away in a secret account.
I bought you the car I've been saving. And it's gonna be delivered on Friday.
I feel great. Thanks to you.
Hey! You! Question is, what happened to his hormones?
What about Kluver-Bucy syndrome? Bilateral lesions in the temporal lobes. Visual agnosia and hypersexuality are the key symptoms.
Go call your wife, tell her you're not coming home, because you have to give the patient a cranial MR angiogram.
The patient messed with the wrong woman. 13 has clearly been giving ringside assistance at the Muay Thai club. As tough as that was to witness though, we have a new clue: hypersexuality. That has pointed Foreman to a very rare and spicy diagnosis called Kluver-Bucy syndrome. That's a neurological disorder that affects the temporal lobes, but with a specific focus on the amygdala. It's typically visible on MRI, so the team are doing a higher detailed study of the vessels to see if they're missing something. The amygdala itself is a very interesting brain structure, as it can simultaneously regulate aggression and sex drive. One study interestingly showed that homosexual men innately have a more female brain structure in the amygdala, and homosexual women have a more masculine pattern. That could potentially explain how a sexual orientation can be coded rather than learned. We've also learned a lot from animal studies about what happens when we stimulate this area. Like one study from the 80s by Masco and Carrera that found female rats who had their amygdala stimulated dramatically increased their sexual receptivity even when they had no ovaries. But the amygdala has way more roles, including mediating fear, and it increases by 4 times from a pre-pregnant woman to giving birth, memory modulation, emotional learning, aggression, and the feeling of social connectedness. Kluver-Bucy can cause all of those things, and the actual scientists that discovered it contributed a lot to the learning of the function of the amygdala. I do have another theory though. The patient has symptoms which could be due to Huntington's disease. 13 is quite literally watching her future unfold before her eyes, as it can also cause behavioral changes, visual perception abnormalities, and ultimately cognitive decline. It usually causes abnormal movements as well, and maybe that's what this little attack was just then. That would fit the story so well and has to be my second diagnostic guess.
Odd that a man who can't run would own so many pairs of sneakers.
Here it is. Circle of Willis. The vessels are narrow.
Narrow for you, normal for him.
He could have recently gotten an intermittent arrhythmia.
I know heart and head start with the same 3 letters, but you gotta read all the way to the end.
If we can trigger the arrhythmia and identify it, we might be able to stop it from killing him.
Do an EP study.
Tell Dr. Hadley I'm sorry.
How long you plan on keeping me from going home? Until you're convinced I'm a different person? One who won't do anything stupid?
By Wednesday, you'll be fine.
He's going to VTAC.
Test is working.
This might burn a little bit. Charging to 60. Clear. Ow!
You've been dyeing your hair. Hair is growing in red.
The patient's heart is about to stop, the whole team are ready to try and save his life, and House is trying to figure out what brand of L'Oreal he uses. He is denying it though and seems to have no reason to lie here, which means it could be a clue, and I have another theory. The drugs have been causing a hair colour change for all this time, and his natural hair colour of red is showing now that they've stopped. One of the drugs was an antiviral and it was keeping his brain problem under control, and that's why things are still getting worse after the meds have been stopped. The show's name is Adverse Reactions, because Taub is going to tell his wife he cheated due to the overwhelming guilt that came with being suspicious of his wife when she was just getting him his dream car. Our patient feels guilty for lying to his partner, but what if the adverse reaction is that she found out and got herself another painter who can give her masterpieces of the night sky, red fiery evenings of romance, and herpes. That then transmits to his brain, leading to herpes encephalitis and all of his symptoms. Question for you smart people, what percentage of people have genital herpes? Answers down below and I'll give you it at the end of the video.
Does your theory include any genetic mutations that could cause his hair to change color? Red hair means it's not Kluver-Bucy. Melanin affects hair color. What affects melanin?
Hormones.
Hormone panels were all normal.
Found a long QT interval. I think it's Romano-Ward syndrome.
A bunch of nerves controls the tempo of the heart. They're all playing in time except one dude who can't keep the beat. Wrecks the whole thing.
Patient needs a cardiac sympathectomy.
Wow. I know the photos are fake.
Too bad. Goodbye. So you knew that I wasn't gonna give you anything worthwhile? Then why did you bother coming out with me?
We need to surgically sever the connection between your heart and brain.
Where are my regular doctors?
Regular doctors?
We can't do the surgery. We're back to where we started, visual agnosia. Maybe there was a batch of toxic paint that he used up a few months ago. But what if the toxins were stored in his fat cells a year ago, and now they're being released into his bloodstream? He's hid them somewhere.
I've only sold 2 paintings in the last 3 years since we met.
Why did you lie to me? You think I'm that shallow?
We're the ones you didn't sell.
You already know that Taub sees himself in the patient, and he also advises the patient to keep lying to his partner, then just witnessed how wrong he was. Now he's wondering if his wife will react the same way when he comes clean. Except there is a slight difference between lying about selling paintings and having a full-on affair that ended your career. The episode name is definitely starting to make sense. Before the patient gets the nerve supply to his heart severed though, we need to figure this out, and I have one diagnostic guess left. We now know that there's a very good chance that this red hair, hypersexuality and visual agnosia could be caused by toxic paint exposure. I was thinking toxins with the methanol, but that isn't exactly known for its deep blues on canvas, so what else could it be? Of course, they're all rare nowadays, but lead, arsenic, cadmium and chromium could have all feasibly made it into paint and caused neurological symptoms with toxic levels of exposure. But at body temperatures, lead is grey-black, arsenic is grey or silvery white, chromium can be silvery or green, but cadmium can run red. So if that's been stored in his fat cells and now is being released, then it could feasibly start seeding into growing hairs to dye them from the inside. Oh, that would explain all his symptoms as well, and has to be my third and final diagnostic guess. Of course, it's very unlikely for toxic metals to just hibernate in fats for months and months, then just randomly get released like this, but it does make for an epic story.
It's not the paint, it's the drugs. They're distorted May, July, September. Every other month he was on all 3 drugs simultaneously.
What was the last drug he was on before the drugs he was on when the symptoms started?
It's Dr. House.
Wake him up. We're done.
No, he says he needs surgery, but not this one. To remove a bezoar.
Fruit and vegetable fibers and skins get stuck together and form a ball. It starts sucking up some of the pills he'd taken. Basically been giving him massive doses of all 3 at once.
You ready? Ta-da! Baby, are you okay?
We need to talk.
That's a real photo, isn't it?
There was a girl.
I love how as soon as House calls, Chase doesn't even need to hear the explanation. He already just cancels the op.
It's Dr. House.
Wake him up. We're done.
He must be so sick of House's shit. Bezoar swallowing up all his pills and releasing them in mega doses. Well, of course he'll have an adverse reaction if you give him enough to tranquilize a walrus. It was an antacid that made it possible as well, since the stomach acid helps to digest those difficult fibers that make up the bezoar. Loads of people take pills for their acid, which is a good idea when you need them, but not to stay on once you don't. Long-term use can cause low sodium, malabsorption, B12 deficiency, higher risks of gut infections, and even osteoporosis, even though this probably doesn't increase fracture risk. Awesome episode though. I'm gonna say 7.9 out of 10 entertainment, 7 out of 10 accuracy, 7.5 out of 10 diagnosis. So question answers. One study showed that risk of death from unlicensed chemotherapy trials was 0.4% or 4 in 1,000. 13% of the population actually has genital herpes, although this isn't active all the time and is only contagious during flares. This episode doesn't make full sense until you watch a previous one where all 6 of a donor's recipients get unwell here.